Here's a truth that has stood the test of time, spoken by Marcus Aurelius himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Imagine carrying that kind of unshakable calm into every challenge life throws at you. A mind so steady, so resilient, that nothing can make it flinch. That's the promise of Stoic endurance, and it's not some ancient relic gathering dust in history books. It's a living, breathing tool for navigating the chaos of modern life, from the daily grind to the unexpected crises that knock us off balance. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Maybe it was a crushing workload, a personal setback, or just the weight of uncertainty pressing down. What if you could face all of it with the same unwavering focus as a Stoic philosopher staring down adversity? This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending hardship doesn't exist. It's about mastering them, training your mind to see obstacles as opportunities, pressure as preparation, and fear as fuel. The Stoics didn't just endure, they thrived by rewiring their perspective. They understood that while we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond, and that tiny shift from reacting to choosing changes everything. Picture a sailor in a storm. The waves don't obey commands, but a skilled captain adjusts the sails. That's the essence of what we're exploring here, the art of steering your mind through life's storms without losing your way. So how do you build that kind of mental fortitude? It starts with 3 pillars: emotional control that keeps panic at bay, perspective shifts that turn setbacks into lessons, and disciplined focus that drowns out distraction. Over the course of this journey, we'll unpack each of these, drawing from centuries of Stoic wisdom and real-world examples of people who have applied these principles to overcome the impossible. By the end, you won't just understand Stoic endurance, you'll feel it, like a fire lit inside you, ready to face anything with a calm that can't be shaken. Because the mind that doesn't flinch isn't born, it's built, and you're about to learn how. To not flinch in the Stoic sense is to meet discomfort with steady eyes and an unshaken will, not because you don't feel it, but because you refuse to let it dictate your response. Think of it like standing in freezing water. The cold is real, inevitable, but whether you thrash against it or steady your breath is entirely up to you. Epictetus, the philosopher born a slave, framed this as the dichotomy of control, a simple but radical idea that splits the world into 2 categories: what's within your power and what isn't. Your opinions, your actions, your choices, those are yours to command. The weather, other people's judgments, or whether your project succeeds, those belong to the world outside your control. Most of our emotional turmoil comes from blurring that line, wasting energy trying to change what we can't, while neglecting the agency we do have. Imagine you're at work and a colleague harshly criticizes your idea. The instinct is to react: defensiveness, anger, maybe self-doubt. But Stoicism asks a different question. Is their opinion in your control? No. But your preparation, your ability to listen, your decision to learn or let go, those are. The same applies to bigger setbacks: losing a job, a rejection, a plan gone awry. The event itself isn't yours to decide, but your next move always is. This isn't passivity, it's precision. Like a sculptor ignoring the flaws in the marble to focus on the chisel in their hand, Stoics train their attention on the tools they hold, their reasoning, their values, their discipline. Everything else, it's just material to work with. When you internalize this, stressors lose their power to derail you. Traffic isn't a personal affront, it's a chance to practice patience. Criticism isn't a wound, it's data to consider or discard. Even pain, whether physical or emotional, becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The key is in that shift from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What can I do with this?" It's the difference between seeing yourself as a leaf battered by the wind and realizing you're the tree, roots deep enough to bend without breaking. That's the Stoic foundation, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. And it starts with asking, in every situation, where does my control begin and where do I let go? Cognitive detachment is the Stoic superpower of pressing pause on your own thoughts, not to silence them, but to witness them like clouds passing overhead before choosing which deserve your attention. Marcus Aurelius perfected this through his nightly journaling ritual, pouring his raw reactions onto parchment, then stepping back to examine them with the calm of a scientist studying lab results. "Today I got angry," he might write, then dissect that anger. Was it justified? Did it serve me? Or was it just noise? That tiny gap between feeling and action is where freedom lies. Think about the last time your emotions hijacked you. Maybe a rude comment made your face flush, or a missed deadline sent your heart racing. In those moments, we often confuse the initial spark of feeling with an obligation to act on it. Stoicism teaches the opposite. That first jolt of anger or fear isn't a command, it's data. Modern neuroscience backs this up. The amygdala fires in milliseconds, but the prefrontal cortex, our rational brake pedal, takes seconds to engage. The Stoics were essentially hacking this delay centuries before brain scans existed. Here's how to practice it today. Next time you draft an email while frustrated, hit save, not send. Walk away for 10 minutes. When you return, ask yourself Marcus's questions. Does this reaction align with who I want to be? Will it improve the situation? More often than not, you'll find the heat has cooled, leaving clarity in its place. Email is just one battlefield. This works equally well with parenting frustrations, traffic rage, or self-doubt spirals. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion, but to become its curator rather than its captive. What makes this so powerful is how it flips the script on control. We can't stop the initial wave of feeling, but we own the shore it crashes against. A provoking coworker doesn't force you to snap back. They hand you a choice wrapped in irritation. Even grief, when met with this kind of detachment, becomes something you move through rather than drown in. It's the difference between being soaked by the storm and learning to dance in the rain. Amor Fati, love of fate, isn't about blind optimism or pretending everything happens for a reason. It's about wrapping your arms around reality, even when it bites back, and whispering, "I choose this too." Nietzsche, though not a Stoic, stole this idea straight from their playbook when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." That's the radical heart of it, not just enduring what life throws at you, but embracing it as if you'd handpicked it yourself. Seneca put it even more bluntly in his letters. The wise man turns all obstacles into fuel. Picture a blacksmith hammering red-hot iron. Every strike isn't breaking the metal, it's shaping it. That's the shift Stoicism demands. When your flight gets cancelled, or your project fails, or your body betrays you with illness, resistance is the default. But what if, instead of screaming at the storm, you asked, "What can I forge from this?" History's full of people who did exactly that. Take Beethoven, his ears failing as he composed his greatest symphonies, literally rewriting the rules of music because he couldn't hear the old ones. Or Malala Yousafzai turning a Taliban bullet into a global crusade for education. They didn't just survive their fates, they married them. Here's the practice. Look back at last week's biggest frustration. Maybe it was a missed promotion, a petty argument, or a plan that collapsed. Now ask, how did my resistance make it heavier? because pain is inevitable but suffering. That's often what we add ourselves, the extra weight of, "this shouldn't be happening." Amor Fati strips that away. It's not resignation, it's alchemy. When you stop fighting reality, you free up energy to move within it. So next time life hands you the opposite of what you wanted, try this: pause, take a breath, and say, "Good." Not because it is, but because you're declaring it material for your growth. The obstacle becomes the path, the wound becomes the wisdom, and suddenly, you're not a victim of chaos, you're its collaborator. Consider this moment from history: Cato the Younger standing before the Roman Senate, his political career in ruins. His enemies had outmaneuvered him, his ideals rejected by those in power. Yet instead of crumbling, he did something extraordinary. He smiled. Not a bitter grin, but the calm expression of a man who recognized that defeat had handed him something far more valuable than victory: the chance to prove his principles weren't just words. That's the Stoic secret hiding in plain sight. Every obstacle, every setback, carries an invitation to grow stronger in precisely the places life tries to break you. The phrase, "the obstacle is the way," isn't just poetic, it's a practical blueprint. When the Stoics faced barriers, they didn't see dead ends, they saw detours pointing toward uncharted strength. Think of a river blocked by boulders. It doesn't stop, it finds new paths, carving deeper channels in the process. That's the mindset shift. Your current struggle, whether it's a financial strain, a creative block, or a personal betrayal, isn't a wall. It's a workshop. Take Cato's story further. After his political downfall, he didn't retreat. He doubled down on philosophy, mentoring younger Stoics like Brutus, and his resilience became legendary. His losses, it turned out, were the fire that tempered his influence. Centuries later, George Washington would stage plays about Cato to inspire revolutionary troops. The very defeats meant to silence him became his megaphone. Here's how to apply this today. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On the left, write your current obstacle, maybe a project that failed, a skill you're struggling to master, or a relationship fracture. On the right, answer this: what could this teach me if I stopped resisting it? A missed promotion might reveal where your skills need sharpening. A creative block could force you to explore new methods. Even grief, when approached with this lens, often uncovers reservoirs of compassion you didn't know you had. The key is to stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" Because the obstacle isn't just something to overcome, it's the training ground for the person you're becoming. When you start seeing barriers this way, life stops happening to you and starts happening for you. And that's when you realize the boulder in your path isn't blocking the road, it is the road. Premeditatio malorum. The Stoic practice of negative visualization sounds grim at first glance. Why would anyone willingly dwell on worst-case scenarios? But this isn't about pessimism, it's about inoculation. Seneca compared it to a fire drill. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. Rehearsal softens the blow. Think of it like a vaccine for the mind, a small, controlled dose of adversity to strengthen your resilience against the real thing. Take a moment to imagine your deepest fear materializing. Maybe it's losing your job, a loved one walking away, or your health failing. Sit with that discomfort for just 30 seconds. Notice how your heart races, your breath tightens. That's the sting of the needle. Now ask yourself, what would I do next? Not in a panicked spiral, but with the clarity of someone who's already mapped the terrain. That's the power of this practice. You're not predicting the future, you're dismantling its power to paralyze you. History's greatest Stoics used this like mental armor. Before any important event, Seneca would visualize his own exile, poverty, even death. Not to wallow, but to confront a truth we often avoid, that none of these things would break him. When Emperor Nero later banished him, Seneca didn't crumble. He'd already lived through it in his mind 1,000 times. The blow landed softly because he'd rehearsed the catch. Here's how to make this practical today. Pick one anxiety gnawing at you, say, an upcoming presentation. Now, vividly imagine the worst. Your slides fail, the audience scowls, your voice cracks. Feel the heat of embarrassment, then script your response. I'll pause, acknowledge the tech issue with a joke, and continue with key points from memory. Suddenly, the monster under the bed has a shape, and you've got a flashlight. The magic lies in the duality of this exercise. By facing the worst, you accomplish two things. You shrink the terror of the unknown, and you uncover hidden reserves of adaptability. It's why Navy SEAL train in simulated torture, why astronauts drill for equipment failures. When catastrophe loses the element of surprise, what's left isn't fear, it's focus. Try this tonight as you lie in bed, mentally walk through tomorrow's challenges but twist them into disasters. Your commute becomes a gridlocked nightmare. Your meeting morphs into a confrontation. Then plot your calm step by step. You'll sleep lighter knowing no scenario owns you, because the Stoics knew a secret modern psychology confirms. The brain can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real one. Every rehearsal builds neural pathways, making calm your default setting when chaos strikes. This isn't about expecting the worst, it's about knowing you can handle it. And that shift from what if to even if is where true courage begins. Voluntary discomfort sounds like a contradiction. Why would anyone choose hardship when comfort is just a thermostat adjustment away? Yet Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who saw exile as a classroom rather than a punishment, argued that comfort is the worst kind of slavery because it makes us fear what we should master. His students didn't just study philosophy. They slept on thin mats in winter, wore light clothing in summer, and fasted to sharpen both body and mind. The goal wasn't suffering for its own sake, but liberation, proving to themselves that discomfort couldn't dictate their peace. This ancient practice finds startling validation in modern science. When you deliberately take a cold shower, skip a meal, or wake up an hour earlier, you're not just enduring discomfort, you're rewiring your brain's response to stress. Studies on cold exposure show it boosts dopamine for hours, while intermittent fasting triggers cellular repair processes. But beyond the biology, there's a deeper psychological shift. Each small voluntary hardship is a vote cast for your own resilience. It's the difference between fearing chaos and knowing, bone deep, that you can handle it. Consider the Navy SEALs' infamous 40% rule. When recruits hit their perceived limit, instructors tell them they've only tapped 40% of their actual capacity. That revelation doesn't come from pep talks. It comes from repeatedly choosing discomfort until the mind learns its own strength. You don't need boot camp to apply this. Start with something as simple as leaving your phone outside the bathroom for a week, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The scale doesn't matter, the intentionality does. Musonius took this further, urging his students to practice want by occasionally living as if impoverished, eating plain food, wearing worn clothes. Not to romanticize poverty, but to dissolve the fear of it. Modern parallels abound. Tech CEOs like Jack Dorsey adopted intermittent fasting, not just for health, but to maintain clarity when resources are scarce. Or take author Neil Gaiman, who writes first drafts longhand to embrace the discomfort of slower, unedited creation. These aren't punishments, they're strength training for the mind. Here's your challenge. Pick one tiny voluntary discomfort this week. Maybe it's drinking your coffee black, sitting on the floor instead of the couch, or walking in light rain without an umbrella. Notice the initial resistance, that instinctive, "I don't want to," then lean into it. With each repetition, you're building what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but immunity to life's inevitable irritations. Because when you've willingly faced the cold shower, the delayed meal, the awkward silence, the bigger hardships lose their fangs, you stop seeing comfort as the default and start recognizing it as what it really is, a bonus, not a birthright. The magic lies in the contrast. Just as lifting weights makes everyday objects feel lighter, voluntary discomfort makes ordinary life feel richer. That first sip of warm coffee after a cold shower. The comfort of your bed after a day of intentional hardship. Those moments become infused with gratitude, not entitlement. And that's the ultimate goal, not to live in perpetual discomfort, but to ensure comfort never becomes your prison. When you can choose hardship, you're no longer afraid of it. And a mind that isn't afraid of discomfort is a mind that doesn't flinch. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon against daily frustrations, one he called the view from above. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, gripping the wheel until your knuckles whiten. Now imagine rising straight up like a camera pulling back until your car is just a speck in a grid of streets. Keep going, see your city shrink to a dot, then your country, then the whole spinning blue marble of earth hanging in black space. That argument with your coworker. That unpaid bill, from here they're smaller than stardust. This wasn't escapism for Marcus, it was reality checking at cosmic scale. He practiced this daily, scribbling in his journal. How quickly all things disappear. In the universe, the bodies themselves, in time, the remembrance of them. Think of an old photo buried in your attic, that frown you wore over a missed promotion in 2010, the nights you lost sleep over someone's thoughtless comment. From today's vantage point, how much of that still weighs on you? That's the power of temporal perspective. The Stoics called it sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things, and used it like a mental reset button. When petty anxieties arise, ask, will this matter in 5 years? If not, it doesn't deserve 5 minutes of your peace. History brims with leaders who wielded this tool. When Teddy Roosevelt lost both his mother and wife on the same day, he retreated to the Dakota Badlands, riding beneath skies so vast his grief seemed to shrink to manageable size. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a radical shift in awareness when seeing Earth from orbit, making borders and conflicts seem absurdly small. You don't need a spaceship to replicate it. Try this tonight. Stand outside, look up at the stars, and whisper your biggest worry aloud. Hear how it sounds against the silence of the cosmos. Here's how to make it practical. Grab a pen and divide a page into 2 columns. Left side, current stress. Right side, past stress. List today's top 3 worries vertically. Then recall 3 past crises that once felt equally dire. Maybe a breakup, a job loss, a failed exam. Draw lines connecting each past stress to the strengths or opportunities it eventually brought you. That presentation you bombed, it led to a public speaking course that boosted your career. The heartbreak, it cleared space for a deeper love. Now look back at today's column and ask, what future strength is hidden here? The magic lies in the double lens, zooming out not just in space but in time. Your current struggle isn't trivialized, it's contextualized. That critical email isn't unimportant, but seen against the arc of your life, it becomes a single brushstroke in a much larger painting. Marcus knew this when he ruled an empire. Think of substance entire and time entire. Every morning, he'd visualize the coming day's meetings and disputes as if they'd already happened centuries ago. The result, decisions made with calm clarity, not reactive panic. So next time stress tightens your chest, pause. Picture your biographer writing about this moment a decade from now. What lesson will they highlight? See yourself as the old woman or man you'll become, smiling at how this very challenge shaped you. The view from above doesn't erase problems, it reveals their true size. And often you'll find they were never as towering as they felt, just shadows cast by standing too close to the wall. Memento Mori, the practice of meditating on mortality, isn't some morbid obsession with death. It's a lens for clarifying life. The Stoics carried this concept like a compass, using it to cut through the noise of trivial concerns and align their days with what truly mattered. Seneca put it bluntly, "You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire." We waste hours chasing petty victories, nursing old grievances, scrolling mindlessly as if time were infinite. But death, the Stoics argued, is the ultimate accountability partner. It whispers, "Is this how you'd spend your last afternoon?" Take a moment to visualize your own funeral. Not to dwell in gloom, but to ask a piercing question. What would people say about your life as it stands today? The eulogy test strips away illusions. That promotion you're grinding for, the neighbor's snide remark that still stings, the perfect Instagram post you keep tweaking, would any of it make the cut when your story is distilled to its essence? Probably not. What would? Chances are it's the moments you're too busy to prioritize now, deep conversations, creative work that excites you, quiet walks with someone you love. History's most impactful figures kept this practice close. Steve Jobs famously asked himself every morning, "If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do?" When the answer was no too many days in a row, he changed course, leading him to leave college, then Apple, then return to revolutionize entire industries. The Stoics would have nodded in approval. Epictetus urged his students to live as if each evening might be their last, not with frantic bucket list energy, but with deliberate focus on what deserved their limited attention. Here's the paradox: remembering death doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who contemplated their mortality for just 10 minutes became more generous, more likely to mend broken relationships, and less concerned with superficial status. Why? Because death is the great equalizer. That argument over who's right suddenly feels petty when measured against the finality of the grave. The project you've been procrastinating gains urgency when framed as one of your last chances to create something meaningful. Try this today. Write 2 lists. On the left, how I spent yesterday. On the right, how I'd spend my last month. The gap between them is your roadmap. Maybe you'll notice you've been postponing that hard conversation or letting administrative busywork crowd out creative projects. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome with this clarity. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, not as a threat but as a gift, the gift of waking up to your own agency. The modern world thrives on manufactured urgency. Notifications convince us every email is critical. Algorithms inflame petty outrage, and productivity gurus preach grinding harder for some distant payoff. Memento Mori cuts through that. When a Roman general paraded through the streets in triumph, a slave stood behind him whispering, "Respice post te, hominum te memento," look behind you. Remember, you are mortal. We need that whisper now more than ever, not to scare us into inaction, but to free us from trivial fears. After all, when the hourglass is running low, you don't fret over spilled sand, you marvel at how each grain catches the light as it falls. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journals to become one of history's most revered books. He was simply doing what Stoics had done for centuries, holding daily conversations with himself to sharpen his mind and steady his spirit. Those pages we now call meditations were never meant for publication. They were scratches in the dark, a philosopher-emperor wrestling with his own humanity. And that's precisely what makes them so powerful. Because when you journal like a Stoic, you're not writing for an audience, you're building a mind that doesn't flinch. Start with this truth: your journal isn't a diary of events but a forge for character. The Stoics used two key rituals, morning preparation and evening review, to bookend their days with purpose. At dawn, they didn't just jot down tasks, they steeled themselves for chaos. Marcus would write things like, "When you wake up, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant." Not to breed cynicism, but to disarm surprise. Imagine beginning your day with that clarity, mentally rehearsing challenges before they arrive. It's like strapping on armor before battle, not because you crave conflict, but because you refuse to be caught off guard. Your morning template needs just 3 prompts. First, gratitude. Name one specific thing you're thankful for, not just my health, but the way sunlight hit the kitchen wall at breakfast. Gratitude grounds you in what's already yours. Next, intentions. Today, I will meet irritation with patience, or I'll listen twice as much as I speak. These aren't to-do items, they're vows to your future self. Finally, premeditation. Envision one challenge likely to arise: a tense meeting, a procrastinated project, and script your calm response. If X happens, I'll do Y. This simple trio takes 5 minutes but reshapes your entire day. Now flip to the evening. Seneca swore by this practice. Ask yourself, what bad habit did I curb today? How am I better? Did my actions align with my principles? Notice what's missing. No dwelling on others' faults, no tallying external wins, just cold, kind honesty with yourself. Marcus modeled this brutally. After suppressing anger at a senator's insult, he wrote, "I did well by not reacting, but why did his words sting at all?" That's the work left to do. That's the golden question: not what went wrong today, but where did I let it under my skin? Try this tonight. Light a candle. Stoics loved fire as a reminder of life's brevity, and answer 3 questions. First, what's one thing I could have done better? Not self-flagellation, but refinement, like a blacksmith examining yesterday's blade. Second, where did I exercise strength? Maybe you held your tongue when provoked or started that intimidating task. Stoicism isn't about ignoring wins, it's about recognizing them as proof of growth. Finally, what's one lesson to carry forward? Extract the wisdom, then mentally place the rest in a box labeled "finished." Sleep comes easier when the day is truly complete. The magic lies in the pairing: morning as architect, evening as archaeologist. Over time, patterns emerge. You'll notice how often your frustrations trace back to the same vulnerabilities, or how small intentions compound into unshakable habits. One modern executive I know keeps 2 journals. A cheap notebook for raw morning pages he burns monthly, symbolizing impermanence, and a leather-bound volume for evening insights worth revisiting. The act of choosing what to preserve becomes its own meditation on value. This isn't about crafting perfect prose. Marcus's journals are messy, half-formed thoughts in Greek, abrupt self-scoldings, sudden shifts in tone. What matters is the confrontation, the willingness to sit across from yourself and ask without flinching, who were you today and who will you choose to be tomorrow? Because the page doesn't lie, and neither eventually will you. Epictetus dropped a truth bomb 2,000 years ago that still shatters illusions today. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. That traffic jam ruining your morning, it's not the brake lights causing your frustration, it's the story you're telling yourself about them. I'll be late, this always happens to me, why can't people drive better? Those judgments are the real bottleneck. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, the moment between an external event and your internal reaction where freedom silently waits. Picture 2 drivers stuck in the same gridlock. One white knuckles the wheel, muttering about idiot drivers while stress hormones flood their system. The other leans back, cues up a podcast they've been meaning to hear, and uses the pause to mentally outline their day. Same traffic, diametrically opposed experiences. That's the power of controlling impressions, not by denying reality, but by consciously choosing how to frame it. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by a brutal master, had every reason to view life through a lens of bitterness. Instead, he taught that circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him. Your brain is a meaning-making machine, constantly interpreting raw events through filters of past experiences and hidden biases. A coworker's terse email becomes "they disrespect me" rather than "they're overwhelmed." A rainy day feels like a personal affront instead of nature's free watering for your garden. These automatic interpretations feel like truths, but they're really just habitual thought patterns, and like all habits, they can be rewritten. Here's your challenge. Before sunset today, pick one routine annoyance, maybe your neighbor's barking dog, a slow-moving grocery line, or your phone's constant pings. When it happens, pause, notice the immediate judgment, "this is unbearable," then consciously craft 3 alternative interpretations. That dog's protecting its home, good instincts. This line gives me time to plan dinner. Each notification means someone's trying to connect. At first, this feels artificial, like putting lipstick on a pig. But with repetition, something shifts. You start catching your brain in the act of manufacturing misery, and suddenly, you're no longer a passive recipient of life's chaos, you're its editor. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, "You don't have to turn this into something, it doesn't have to upset you." Modern psychology validates this ancient hack. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, the gold standard for treating anxiety and depression, is essentially Stoicism repackaged, teaching patients to identify and reshape distorted thoughts. Studies show that people who practice reframing stressful situations experience lower cortisol levels and higher problem-solving creativity. It's not positive thinking, it's accurate thinking. The barking dog isn't good or bad, it's just a dog. Your judgment assigns the value. Epictetus took this further with his famous 3-filter test for impressions. When something unsettles you, ask 1. Is this within my control? If no, release it. 2. Is this judgment true or just automatic? Prove it. 3. How would my best self view this? Rise to meet them. Try this tonight. Replay today's biggest frustration through these filters. That rude cashier, maybe they just lost a loved one. The cancelled plan, an unexpected gift of free time. The more you exercise this mental muscle, the quicker it kicks in during real-time stress. Soon, you'll catch yourself mid-sigh, smiling at how easily you used to hand your peace to circumstance. Because when you control the impressions, you control the experience, and no traffic jam, no annoying coworker, no setback can take that from you unless you surrender it. That space between what happens to you and how you respond, that's where Stoic freedom lives. Epictetus called it the discipline of assent, the moment your mind receives an impression and must decide, will I accept this as truth or question it? Imagine your thoughts as emails hitting your inbox. Most of us instinctively open every message, absorbing the contents without scrutiny. The Stoics proposed a radical alternative: hit pause before clicking. Because once an unexamined belief enters your system, it starts running scripts: fear, anger, resentment without your conscious permission. Modern psychology echoes this ancient insight. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, operates on the same principle. Our emotions don't come directly from events, but from the beliefs we attach to them. A flat tire doesn't cause frustration. The thought, "this ruins everything," does. Therapists call these automatic negative thoughts, mental shortcuts our brains take based on past experiences. The Stoics simply called them unexamined impressions, and both agree. The path to resilience begins by intercepting them at the door. Here's how to practice this today with a simple pause check method. Next time you feel a surge of anger or anxiety, freeze. Literally stop moving for 3 breaths, then ask 1. What story am I telling myself right now? Example, my boss ignored me, she doesn't respect my work. 2. Is this absolutely true? Can you prove it, or is it an assumption? 3. What's a more neutral explanation? She's preoccupied with her own deadlines. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about creating space to choose your response. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily. When offended by someone, he'd remind himself, they're doing what seems right to them, and not to excuse poor behavior, but to prevent their actions from hijacking his peace. Try this reframe next time you're stuck in traffic. Instead of, this is wasting my time, experiment with, this is protecting me from rushing. The circumstance hasn't changed, but your suffering dissolves. That's the alchemy of assent, transforming leaden thoughts into golden awareness, one pause at a time. Take a deep breath right now, not just air filling your lungs, but centuries of Stoic wisdom flowing into your present moment. The ancients knew something modern science now confirms. Your breath is the most powerful remote control for your nervous system, a built-in reset button for when stress tries to hijack your calm. Chrysippus, one of Stoicism's founding thinkers, compared controlling the breath to steering a ship through turbulent waters, small adjustments creating stability amid chaos. Picture this, you're about to walk into a high-stakes meeting, your pulse racing like a cornered animal. This is where the Stoic breath becomes your anchor. Try the 4-4-4 technique. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold that oxygen in your cells for another 4, then exhale slowly for 4 more. No special apps or equipment needed, just the ancient rhythm of inhale, pause, release. What makes this so potent is the physiology behind it. Extending your exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, flipping the switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. The Stoics didn't just stumble upon this, they engineered it. Seneca wrote letters describing how he'd use measured breathing to steady himself before confronting Nero's unpredictability. Centuries later, Roman gladiators in the Colosseum would practice similar patterns to maintain focus amid roaring crowds and flashing swords, today's equivalent. That moment your phone pings with a passive-aggressive email or your toddler melts down in the grocery aisle, the stressors have changed, but the solution remains timeless. Here's why this works on a neurological level. When you consciously slow your breath, you're sending a direct memo to your amygdala, the brain's alarm center that says stand down. It's like pouring water on the fire of panic before it can spread. Modern studies show just 6 rounds of 4-4-4 breathing can lower cortisol levels by nearly 20%. But the Stoic twist lies in the intention behind it. This isn't just stress relief, it's a declaration of sovereignty over your own mind. Practice this today before any transition point, stepping out of your car for work, right before a phone call, even while waiting for your coffee to brew. Pair each exhale with a silent Stoic mantra. This breath is my choice. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. The gap between trigger and response widens. Where once you'd snap at a colleague's criticism, now there's space for 3 conscious breaths, and with them, the clarity to answer rather than react. Zeno, the original Stoic, famously taught that philosophy wasn't about abstract ideas but the art of living. What's more fundamental to living than the breath that sustains it? By mastering this simple rhythm, you're not just managing stress, you're reclaiming the most basic proof of your autonomy, the power to fill your lungs deliberately, and in doing so, Remind yourself that no external force can dictate your inner state unless you surrender that control. So next time chaos knocks, let your breath answer first, steady, measured, unflinching. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, carved his philosophy into a single command. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. Imagine applying that ratio today, where every opinion, hot take, and knee-jerk reaction floods our screens in real time. The ancient Stoics treated speech like a currency, spending it only when the value outweighed the cost. Meanwhile, modern life rewards the opposite. Think of Twitter threads dissecting news before the facts are clear, or group chats where messages pile up like unread receipts. The difference isn't just volume, it's intention. Stoic silence wasn't passive, it was strategic, a way to conserve attention for what truly deserved it. Consider how often we interrupt not to understand, but to reload our own arguments. Seneca observed this in Rome's political circles. While we wait for our turn to speak, we're already crafting rebuttals instead of hearing. Fast forward to today's Zoom meetings, where the mute button becomes a modern Stoic tool, not to disengage, but to create space between impulse and response. The discipline lies in resisting the itch to fill silence with noise, whether that's awkward small talk or reflexive defensiveness. Here's the experiment today. Choose one conversation where you'll practice active silence. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but truly absorbing the other person's words, their pauses, their word choices, the emotions beneath the language. Notice how often your mind jumps to interrupt with a similar experience, "That happened to me too," or unsolicited advice, "You should just." The Stoics called this prosouch attention, so focused it becomes a form of respect. When Epictetus taught, he'd often pause mid-lesson, letting students sit with the weight of an idea before dissecting it. That silence wasn't empty, it was fertile ground for insight. Social media trains us to react at the speed of a thumb scroll, but wisdom grows in the gaps between stimulus and response. Marcus Aurelius journaled about catching himself preparing speeches while others talked. Stop watering down what you might hear by anticipating it. Try this tonight. After a conversation, jot down 3 things you learned by listening that you'd have missed if you dominated the dialogue. You might discover that your coworker's offhand comment about stress reveals a need for support, or that your child's rambling story holds a hidden worry. The highest form of Stoic silence isn't muteness, it's creating a container where others feel heard. Think of it like a chessboard. Every time you resist the urge to speak, you're not losing a turn, you're studying the board more deeply before moving. Zeno's 2-ear rule wasn't about suppression, it was about precision. When you do speak, your words land with the force of a diamond, rare, refined, and worth the wait. The Stoic sage wasn't some mythical figure. It was a deliberate mental construct, a North Star for navigating life's storms. Picture Cato the Younger standing in the Roman Senate, his political career in ashes, his enemies gloating. Instead of crumbling, he simply smiled, not with bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd already won. Because for Cato, victory wasn't measured in votes or titles, but in his unbroken commitment to principle. That's the essence of the sage, not perfection, but unwavering alignment between action and belief, no matter the cost. Socrates embodied this same ideal when he calmly drank the hemlock, refusing to compromise his teachings even as the poison numbed his limbs. His students wept, but he spent his final moments discussing the immortality of the soul, not as performance, but as proof that philosophy wasn't just something he taught, it was the marrow in his bones. The sage isn't immune to fear or pain, they're simply more committed to their values than to avoiding discomfort. Here's how to make this practical today. Choose one role model, historical or personal, whose composure you admire. It could be Mandela enduring prison with grace, a grandparent who weathered hardship without complaint, or even a fictional character like Atticus Finch. Now install them as a mental advisor. When you're stuck in traffic, ask, how would they use this pause, facing unfair criticism? What would they prioritize, winning the argument or keeping their dignity? You're not comparing yourself to their heights, you're borrowing their perspective to see your situation with new eyes. Marcus Aurelius did this daily, writing in his journals. When you wake up, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. He wasn't generating original thoughts. He was channeling the wisdom of his own mentors like Epictetus and Antoninus Pius. The sage isn't a distant ideal, it's a mirror reflecting the best version of yourself back at you. Try this tonight. Replay today's toughest moment, but mentally insert your role model into your shoes. How would they have breathed through that frustration? What words would they have chosen in that argument? The gap between their response and yours isn't an indictment, it's a roadmap. Because the sage isn't born, they're built, one conscious choice at a time. And every time you ask, what would they do? You're laying another brick in the foundation of your own unshakable mind. Seneca's exile should have broken him. Banished to Corsica's rocky shores, stripped of status and separated from everything familiar, he faced what most would call a life-shattering blow. Yet in those 8 years of isolation, he produced some of his most profound letters and essays, works that would outlive Rome itself. Why? Because Seneca understood a radical truth. Suffering isn't just something to endure, it's raw material for transformation. The Stoics called this post-traumatic growth centuries before psychologists coined the term, the phenomenon where adversity doesn't merely leave scars but forges unshakable strength. Think of a forest after a wildfire. At first glance, its devastation, charred trunks, smoldering ground. But look closer, the heat cracked pine cones, releasing seeds that couldn't germinate otherwise. The ash enriches the soil. Within seasons, new growth sprouts more resilient than what stood before. That's the alchemy Seneca practiced in exile. His letters reveal no self-pity, just relentless curiosity. What can this teach me? How can I use this emptiness to rebuild wiser? When Nero's sentence arrived, Seneca didn't see an ending. He spotted a blank page. Modern research confirms this ancient insight. Studies on survivors of illness, loss, and disaster show that up to 70% report positive psychological changes, deeper relationships, renewed purpose, or discovered strength. But here's the catch: growth isn't automatic. It requires the Stoic double move, first accepting the reality of pain, then interrogating it for meaning. A cancer survivor doesn't find wisdom by pretending the disease was a gift, but by asking, how did this reshape what I value? What did it reveal about my capacity to endure? Your turn. Pick one hardship from your past, a betrayal, a failure, a loss. Now grab paper and divide it into 3 columns. First, the wound. Name the pain honestly. Being laid off made me feel disposable. Next, the work. List skills or insights forged in that fire. I learned to network authentically, discovered freelance opportunities. Finally, the wisdom. Distill one lasting lesson. My worth isn't tied to a job title. This isn't about silver linings, it's archaeology of the self-excavating strength from ruins. Consider Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz by finding meaning in unimaginable suffering. His conclusion echoed Seneca: when we can't change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. Notice he didn't say ignore the situation or pretend it's fine. Stoicism isn't spiritual bypassing, it's the deliberate refining of character through life's inevitable fires. Every scar tells a story, not just of what wounded you, but of how you healed. Now project forward. 5 years from today, looking back on your current struggle, what might you thank it for? Maybe this period of uncertainty is teaching you adaptability you'll later rely on. That conflict at work could be training you in diplomacy for future leadership. Even grief, when fully lived, expands your capacity for compassion in ways joy never could. The Stoics didn't worship suffering, but they revered what it could produce, like blacksmiths who respect the flame not for its burn, but for what it lets them shape. Your pain isn't just something to survive. It's the chisel against your marble, the ink in your pen, the silent co-author of the wisdom you'll one day impart. So ask yourself, if this hardship were my teacher, what is it insisting I learn? Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery and crippling injury, left us a simple weapon against impulsive rage. When you are offended, remember that it's your own judgment that offended you. Those words hold a challenge. What if anger isn't something that happens to you, but something you unconsciously permit? The Stoics didn't just preach patience, they engineered a mental protocol for it, a deliberate gap between provocation and response. Think of it like a circuit breaker for emotions. When someone cuts you off in traffic or your coworker takes credit for your idea, the instinct is to snap. But what if you installed a switch that forces a pause? Here's how it works in practice. The next time your pulse spikes, borrow a page from ancient Stoic playbooks and institute a 10-second ritual. But instead of just counting, which can devolve into simmering, silently pair each number with the mantra, "This too shall pass." 1. This too, 2. 3. Shall 4 pass. By 10, you've done something remarkable. You've shifted from reacting as your animal brain demands to responding as your rational mind chooses. The Persian poet Attar captured this perfectly when he wrote that the phrase was inscribed on a king's ring to humble him in victory and comfort him in sorrow. Both the sting of insult and the heat of anger are temporary if we let them be. History offers striking examples of this pause in action. When the Roman general Scipio Africanus discovered his officers plotting against him, he didn't order executions or public shaming. He summoned them to his tent, read their damning letters aloud, then handed them back with a challenge. Prove me wrong. That breath between betrayal and response, that Stoic space. Modern psychology confirms its power. Studies show that even a 6-second delay, the time it takes for emotional chemicals to dissipate in the brain, dramatically reduces impulsive reactions. Try this today with micro pauses. When your phone dings with an irritating message, physically set it down for 10 seconds before replying. Notice how often your first draft response differs from your final one. Or when a family member says something triggering, excuse yourself to splash water on your face, not to avoid the conversation, but to enter it with clarity. Epictetus framed it as separating the event from your narrative about it. It's not the thing itself that troubles us, but our opinion of the thing. That split-second distinction is where freedom lies. The magic lies in ritualizing the pause. Marcus Aurelius began mornings by visualizing the day's annoyances, preemptively rehearsing calm responses. Civil rights leaders like John Lewis trained for protests by role-playing slurs and violence to avoid reactive fury when confronted. Even modern hostage negotiators use structured pauses, repeating back what they hear before responding to de-escalate crises. Your daily irritations may not carry the same weight, but the principle holds. Between the match and the explosion, there's always a moment when the fuse can be cut. So tonight, reflect on one recent moment when anger hijacked you. Rewrite the script in your mind. Where could a 10-second pause have changed the outcome? Not by suppressing emotion, but by letting the storm clouds part so your better self could speak. Because the goal isn't to never feel anger, it's to ensure anger never owns you. And sometimes all it takes is 10 breaths to remember who's really in charge. Marcus Aurelius left us a startling admission in his private journals. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. That paradox cuts to the heart of why praise and criticism hold such power over us. The Stoics didn't advocate indifference in the sense of cold detachment. They practiced prosoch, a vigilant awareness of where we place our worth. Picture a Roman senator strutting through the forum, basking in cheers one day only to crumble under jeers the next. Marcus watched these performances with pity, noting how easily people became puppets of public opinion, their strings pulled by whichever crowd happened to gather. There's a liberating clarity in his meditation. If someone told you that certain people were speaking ill of you, wouldn't you rush to defend yourself? Yet when they flatter you, you accept it as truth. Why outsource your self-assessment? This isn't about dismissing feedback. Stoics valued constructive criticism, but about distinguishing between useful insight and the fickle winds of others' moods. Think of a ship's captain adjusting course for legitimate storms while ignoring every passing breeze. History offers a masterclass in this distinction. When the painter Raphael unveiled his works, he'd hide nearby to hear unfiltered reactions, sifting technical observations from baseless critiques. Contrast that with Emperor Nero, who demanded applause so incessantly that historians say he paid claques to follow him. One refined his craft, the other choked on his own need for adoration. The Stoic midpoint, Seneca's advice: listen to criticism as if it might teach you, and praise as if it might mislead you. Recall a time someone's casual compliment sent you floating or a harsh word left you reeling. Maybe a boss's offhand praise had you working overtime to recapture that high, or a relative's critique made you abandon a passion project. Now imagine holding those moments at arm's length, not to mute their meaning, but to examine them like artifacts. Does this align with my values? Is this person qualified to judge? External voices become data points rather than verdicts. Practical exercise for 1 week: keep 2 journals. In the first, record praise you receive, then annotate its source and validity. Client praised my presentation. She values thoroughness, which aligns with my standard for preparation. In the second, log criticisms with the same filter. Teammate called my idea unrealistic, but he dislikes risk, and innovation requires some leaps. Over time, patterns emerge, whose opinions stem from shared values versus personal biases. What feedback consistently helps you grow versus what merely triggers emotion. The goal isn't to become impervious, but to develop selective permeability, a membrane that filters toxins while absorbing nutrients. Like a tree taking in rainwater but blocking pollutants, your self-worth stays rooted in fertile soil. Marcus distilled it perfectly. Let neither another's praise add to your pride, nor their blame add to your regret. The asteroid shines by its own light. Whether applauded or ignored, it follows its course, and so can you. Seneca's evening ritual began not with scrolling, but with a scroll, his personal journal laid open beside a single oil lamp as night fell over Rome. While our modern wind down might involve binge watching or doom scrolling, the Stoics saw these final waking hours as sacred ground for mental housekeeping. The mind should not be left to run wild at bedtime, Seneca warned, comparing an unexamined day to food left undigested. His routine was simple but transformative: an hour of quiet reflection before sleep, free from the glare of screens that hadn't yet been invented, but whose modern equivalents he'd likely ban from the bedroom. Consider how most of us collapse into bed after hours under artificial light, our brains buzzing with half-processed notifications and unfinished mental loops. The Stoic alternative, a deliberate transition from stimulation to stillness. Picture Seneca's villa as dusk settled. No buzzing devices, just the scratch of a pen across parchment as he distilled the day's events into wisdom. Modern science confirms what he intuited. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, delaying deep sleep by up to 3 hours, while journaling reduces bedtime anxiety by nearly 40%. The ritual wasn't about productivity, it was about presence, untangling the mental knots of the day so sleep could do its restorative work. Here's how to adapt this tonight. 90 minutes before bed, declare a Seneca hour, no screens, no work, just 3 intentional steps. First, physical decompression. Wash your face with cool water, a Stoic practice symbolizing clarity. Then dim the lights to mimic ancient oil lamps. Next, mental digestion. Open a notebook and answer 2 questions. What did today teach me? And where did I stray from my values? Not with self-flagellation, but with the detached curiosity of a scientist reviewing data. Finally, gratitude framing. Identify one specific moment of joy, however small, the warmth of your coffee cup, a stranger's smile. Seneca wrote that this practice softens the pillow, not by ignoring life's roughness, but by balancing its weight with grace. The magic lies in the sequence. Unlike modern sleep hacks focused solely on relaxation, Stoic wind downs cultivated active reflection, a conscious sifting of experiences to separate gold from gravel. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his journals, revisiting encounters with difficult people not to stew over them, but to mine them for lessons. When you wake up tomorrow, what quality will you need to meet such people with? This wasn't bedtime brooding, it was mental alchemy, transforming daily friction into wisdom that seeped into his subconscious overnight. Try this tonight with a twist. After journaling, spend 5 minutes in negative visualization, not to invite anxiety, but to inoculate against it. Imagine waking to find your phone stolen, your job eliminated, or your flight cancelled. Then mentally script your calm response. I'll borrow a friend's phone to wipe dated, update my resume by noon, reroute through another airport. When Seneca practiced this, he wasn't preparing for disaster. He was proving to himself that no single event could destroy his equilibrium. Modern studies show this exercise reduces next-day stress by tricking the brain into feeling prepared, like a fire drill for the psyche. The final step, literally tuck yourself in like a Stoic. Ancient philosophers slept on thin mats to avoid overindulgence, but your version might simply be turning the thermostat to 65 degrees optimal for deep sleep and lying flat on your back, the posture Marcus favored for its dignity. As you drift off, whisper Seneca's parting question. What's left undone? Not tasks, but intentions, kindness unexpressed, growth deferred. Let sleep be the comma between today's lessons and tomorrow's application. Because the Stoics knew a truth sleep science now confirms, how you end your day doesn't just affect your rest, it shapes who you'll be when you wake. Courage in Stoicism isn't about charging into battle, it's the quiet resolve to face life's invisible fronts. Picture someone walking away from a high-paying job that's eroding their soul, or a whistleblower exposing corruption despite retaliation. These aren't acts of recklessness but calibrated defiance against forces that demand conformity. The Stoics called this Andrea, the courage to endure discomfort for the sake of what's right. Marcus Aurelius framed it as standing straight, not held straight, a reminder that true courage isn't performative bravery, but the inner posture of refusing to bend to fear. Modern life tests this daily, the entrepreneur risking failure to launch their vision, the addict choosing rehab over numbing, the teenager defending an outcast against peer ridicule. Every time you honor your values over convenience, you're wearing Stoic armor. Temperance, or sophrosyne, is the art of drawing boundaries around desire, not to punish pleasure, but to master it. Think of it as the difference between savoring a glass of wine and drowning in the bottle. The The Stoics saw unchecked cravings as chains. Temperance was the key. Today's temptations are more subtle but just as binding. Endless scrolling that hijacks focus, consumerism that equates purchases with worth, or emotional outbursts that burn bridges. Seneca warned that the man who indulges in excess is like a charioteer without reins, hurtling toward wreckage. Yet temperance isn't deprivation. It's the precision of a chef using salt, enough to enhance, never to overwhelm. When you pause before buying that impulse item or bite back a cutting remark, you're practicing ancient discipline in modern disguise. Justice Diciosyne transcended laws for the Stoics. It was about relational integrity. Epictetus taught that stealing isn't just taking someone's wallet, it's wasting their time with tardiness, or withholding kindness when it costs nothing. Modern applications abound. The manager who fights for their team's fair pay, the neighbor sharing groceries with someone struggling, or simply listening fully instead of waiting to speak. Marcus Aurelius saw justice as the source of all other virtues because it roots our actions in interconnectedness. Every Uber tip added despite no one watching, every credit given for others' ideas. These are stitches in the social fabric Stoics revered. Wisdom, Phronses, wasn't just knowledge, it was the discernment to apply it. Imagine a doctor who memorizes textbooks but misdiagnoses patients. The Stoics would call them educated, not wise. True wisdom bridges theory and terrain, like knowing when to stick to principles and when to adapt. Modern traps like confirmation bias, seeking only agreeable facts, or analysis paralysis, overthinking into stagnation, betray its absence. Zeno compared wisdom to a fortified city, its gates open to truth, its walls strong against deception. Today, that might look like the executive rejecting short-term profits for sustainable growth, or the parent balancing discipline with empathy. Wisdom doesn't shout, it observes, weighs, then acts. The magic happens when these virtues intertwine. Courage without justice becomes brutality. Temperance without wisdom slips into rigidity. Together, they form an exoskeleton for the soul, flexible enough to move through life's complexities, unyielding against its corrosion. Your next challenge, whether a difficult conversation or a personal goal, is a forge for these virtues. And each time you choose them over ease, you're not just solving a problem, you're sculpting a mind that stands firm when the world trembles. Cleans, the second head of the Stoic school, didn't just teach philosophy. He lived it by hauling water and digging gardens to pay for his studies. While other philosophers debated in shaded courtyards, he strengthened his body alongside his mind, proving sweat could be as much a teacher as scrolls. This wasn't just about survival, it was a deliberate fusion of physical and mental discipline. The Stoics saw the body not as a separate entity to be pampered or ignored, but as the vessel through which virtue becomes action. When you push through the burn of a final set of squats or hold a plank until your muscles tremble, you're not just building muscle, you're rehearsing resilience. Modern science now confirms what Cleans embodied. Physical endurance rewires neural pathways for mental fortitude. Studies on Navy SEAL reveal that those who perform best under extreme stress aren't the strongest, but those who have trained their bodies to tolerate discomfort without panic. Every time you choose to run that extra mile despite your lungs screaming, or hold a yoga pose through shaking limbs, you're forging what psychologists call distress tolerance, the same skill that lets you face life's emotional and intellectual challenges without crumbling. The parallel is uncanny. Just as muscles grow through controlled stress, so does character. Consider the ritual of the cold shower, a practice embraced by both ancient Stoics and modern biohackers. That initial shock of icy water triggers the same primal resistance as facing a difficult conversation or starting a daunting project. But when you stand firm under the cold, breath steady, you're not just hardening your body against the chill, you're teaching your mind that discomfort is transient, survivable, even transformative. Seneca captured this when he wrote, "Difficulty strengthens the mind as labor does the body. The gym, the track, the mat, they're all classrooms where you learn to distinguish between pain that harms and pain that hones." Yet Stoic fitness defies modern vanity metrics. While today's influencers chase sculpted abs or marathon times, the Stoics measured progress by self-mastery. A Spartan athlete might train to outshine rivals, but a Stoic trains to outlast their own excuses. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, prioritized simple but grueling exercises, not to impress, but to remind himself that luxury softens resolve. His journal reveals the mindset. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing because it requires standing firm against sudden and unexpected attacks. That's why Stoic exercise favors consistency over PRs, effort over aesthetics. Whether it's carrying groceries home instead of driving, taking the stairs daily, or practicing breath control during a workout, the goal is integration, making discipline so habitual it becomes second nature. Practical application: start small but intentional. Replace one comfort-driven choice with its strenuous alternative each day, walking meetings instead of seated ones, a bodyweight routine before scrolling in bed. Notice how physical resistance trains mental response. The urge to quit a workout mirrors the impulse to avoid hard conversations or creative blocks. By pushing through the former, you inoculate yourself against the latter. Clean's water carrying wasn't martyrdom, it was alchemy, transforming mundane labor into a meditation on perseverance. Your version might be cycling to work in the rain or holding a plank while mentally reciting personal mantras. The form doesn't matter, the fusion does. The deeper truth: your body's limitations are Stoicism's proving ground. When your legs ache during a hike, that's your mind negotiating with fatigue. Will you listen to the voice saying stop or the one whispering adjust and continue? Every rep, every mile, every held breath is a microcosm of life's larger struggles. As Epictetus, who praised athletes for their discipline but critiqued their motives, would say, "Don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your workout, like your life, will go well." The burn isn't your enemy, it's your co-teacher, and the stronger your body becomes, the more it reminds your mind, you are far more capable than comfort ever lets you believe. Seneca saw it coming 2,000 years ago, the illusion of productivity that masks true idleness. He wrote letters warning friends about the dangers of being busy rather than effective, filling their days with motion but no direction. Fast forward to today, where our pockets buzz with infinite distractions masquerading as necessities. The average person unlocks their phone over 150 times a day, not because they need to, but because their fingers move faster than their intentions. This isn't just wasted time, it's stolen attention, fragmenting the focus Stoics considered sacred. Enter the Stoic scroll rule: before your thumb swipes open another app, pause. Ask Seneca's razor-sharp question: is this necessary? Not is this entertaining, or could this be useful someday, but does this serve my purpose right now? The magic lies in that split-second interrogation. That pause is where autonomy lies, the difference between reacting to algorithms and choosing your own use of time. Think of it like a gatekeeper for your mind, turning every unlock into a conscious decision rather than a reflex. History offers a striking parallel in the ancient practice of premeditatio malorum, where Stoics would mentally rehearse losing possessions to appreciate what they had. Apply that to your digital life. Imagine your phone permanently locked. What would you genuinely miss? The maps, the messaging, or just the numbing scroll that eats hours without leaving memories? This isn't about demonizing technology. It's about wielding it with the same intentionality a Roman senator applied to his scrolls. Seneca himself devoured books, but selectively. Be careful lest this reading of many authors and books of every sort may tend to make you discursive and unsteady. Replace authors with apps, and his warning fits the modern dilemma perfectly. Try this today. Set a physical barrier between you and mindless browsing. Leave your phone in another room during meals or place it in a drawer before starting work. When the itch to check arises, sit with the discomfort for 30 seconds, long enough to notice how quickly the craving passes. Like a muscle resisting its first push-up, your attention will strain against this new discipline. But each time you succeed, you're not just avoiding distraction, you're proving to yourself that you're stronger than your triggers. The Stoics divided time into two categories: chronos, quantitative time, and kairos, qualitative moments. Your screen time report measures chronos, how many minutes vanished into the digital ether. But kairos asks a deeper question: how many of those minutes felt truly alive? A single hour spent fully present in conversation or deep work holds more weight than days of fractured scrolling. The goal isn't to eliminate technology, but to elevate its use from compulsive to deliberate, transforming your phone from a slot machine into a tool, one conscious choice at a time. End your day with a digital evening review. Glance at your screen time stats, not with guilt but with curiosity. Which apps truly enriched your day? Which were pacifiers for boredom or anxiety? Tomorrow, adjust accordingly, not with rigid restrictions, but with Seneca's discerning question as your guide: is this necessary? Because every time you choose depth over distraction, you're not just managing your screen time, you're reclaiming your sovereignty, one intentional scroll at a time. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who turned exile into a classroom, had a radical view of friendship. We should judge people not by how they make us feel, but by how they help us grow. Imagine applying that standard today. How many of your contacts would pass the test? The Stoics didn't collect friends like souvenirs. They curated them like master gardeners tending rare, life-giving plants. Every relationship was either compost nourishing their character or weeds choking their peace. This wasn't elitism, it was discernment. Because a friend who merely laughs at your jokes or nods at your complaints might be pleasant, but the one who challenges your excuses and mirrors your blind spots. That's the ally who fortifies your soul. Consider two types of bonds history remembers. First, Seneca's friendship with Nero, a connection dripping with power and privilege, yet toxic enough to eventually cost Seneca his life. Contrast that with Epictetus's bond with his students, built not on status but shared pursuit of wisdom. The difference: one flattered egos, the other forged character. Modern research echoes this. A Harvard study spanning 85 years found that the quality of relationships predicts long-term health and happiness more reliably than wealth or fame. The Stoics would nod knowingly. Virtue-aligned friendships don't just feel good. They function as invisible scaffolding, holding you upright when life's winds howl. Audit your own circle with Stoic rigor. Picture someone you interact with regularly, perhaps the coworker who fuels lunchtime gossip, or the childhood friend who still sees you through outdated lenses. Now ask Musonius's piercing question: does this person stretch me toward my best self, or merely reflect my comfortable habits? Watch how they respond to your growth. When you announce a new goal, do their eyes light with encouragement or cloud with subtle skepticism? When you share a setback, do they offer solutions or amplify complaints? These micro moments reveal whether a bond is steel or straw. The highest Stoic friendship resembles a forge: heat and friction shaping raw potential into strength. Marcus Aurelius found this in Junius Rusticus, the mentor who gifted him Epictetus's teachings and corrected his flaws without apology. Their conversations weren't always warm, but they were transformative. Modern equivalents exist: the gym buddy who won't let you skip reps, the writing partner who returns your drafts bleeding with red ink, the spouse who calls out your avoidance patterns. These relationships demand courage both to seek them and to become that person for others. Yet discernment isn't severance. The Stoics didn't advocate purging everyone who falls short. Sometimes a superficial bond can be elevated by your own virtue. Like a colleague, you steer toward deeper talks during shared commutes. Other ties require boundaries. The relative who drains you might be endured at holidays but excluded from inner circles. The key is intentionality, classifying each relationship by its purpose and adjusting your expectations accordingly. Epictetus advised, if someone brings you down, remember you've chosen their company. Tonight, try this exercise. List 3 people who most influence your mindset. Next to each name, write whether they primarily reflect your current state comfort, challenge your growth friction, or drain your resilience extraction. No one needs to see this. It's raw data for your evolution, because the truth about Stoic friendship is this: you become the average of the 5 people you let closest. Choose them not for their accolades or charm, but for their ability to mirror the virtues you're cultivating. And when you find those rare souls who speak truth without malice and stand firm without rigidity, cherish them. They're the living curriculum of your unwritten education. Epictetus left us a mirror sharper than any polished bronze. His nightly question, what progress have I made? Not what did I accomplish or who noticed me today, but a surgical inquiry into the only metric that truly mattered to the Stoics, the quiet evolution of character. Picture the philosopher standing before his students in Nicopolis, lamplight flickering on weathered faces as he demanded their daily confession. Show me where your principles bent. Point to the moment fear outmaneuvered your reason. This wasn't self-flagellation, it was spiritual accounting. While we chase productivity hacks and morning routines, the Stoics practiced something more radical: an evening reckoning where the only audience was their own uncompromising conscience. Modern life conspires against such honesty. We track steps, calories, and screen time with obsessive precision, yet let days blur together without examining how they shaped or eroded our integrity. The Stoic mirror cuts through that fog. Try this tonight as you brush your teeth, meet your reflection's gaze, and ask 2 questions. First, where did I flinch today? Not the dramatic stumbles, but the subtle dodges, the uncomfortable truth you softened to avoid conflict, the extra hours scrolling when you knew you ought to create, the pang of envy disguised as indifference. These micro-retreats compound like interest, quietly bankrupting your resolve. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his journals, dissecting his own rationalizations with clinical detachment. After losing his temper with a servant, he didn't just note the outburst, he traced its roots. Why did his clumsiness offend me? Because I still confuse efficiency with worth. That's the second question. What does this reveal about what I falsely value? Every flinch points to a hidden attachment, to comfort, approval, or control. The executive who avoids giving tough feedback fears confrontation more than she values her team's growth. The artist who abandons his draft at the first critique prizes validation over mastery. History's most transformative figures kept this mirror close. Benjamin Franklin's virtue chart, where he tracked daily lapses in temper and humility, was pure Stoic machinery. Maya Angelou's practice of reviewing each day's conversations to assess her truthfulness echoes Epictetus' discipline. Neither aimed for perfection, they sought awareness. Because a flaw named loses half its power while an unexamined weakness metastasizes. Here's how to build your own Stoic mirror ritual. Keep a notebook by your bed, not for grand insights but raw observations. Structure it like a ship's log. 1. The weather. Briefly note your emotional climate. Were you anxious, scattered, defensive? 2. The shoals. Identify where you veered off course. Snapped at my daughter when she interrupted my work. 3. The navigation error. Unpack the misalignment. I equivocated productivity with self-worth. 4. Corrective bearings. Script tomorrow's adjustment. Set clear work boundaries, then be fully present with her. The magic lies in the cumulative effect. After 30 days, patterns emerge. Perhaps you flinch most when tired or around certain triggers. Like a sailor studying old logs to anticipate storms, you'll spot vulnerabilities before they capsize you. Epictetus warned that progress without self-examination is theater. If you didn't learn these things to live them, what did you learn them for? Close each session with a final question, not did I fail, but did I learn? Because the Stoic mirror isn't about shame, it's about sharpening. Every honest admission polishes the glass a little clearer, until one day you catch your reflection not flinching at all, just steady, calm, and ready. Patience in Stoicism isn't passive waiting, it's the quiet fury of a river carving through stone. Marcus Aurelius watched oak trees in the storm, their roots gripping deeper with each gust, and saw in them a lesson. Strength isn't just defiance, but the wisdom to bend without breaking. He wrote, "Nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished." That's the heart of active endurance, not idly marking time, but channeling time as your unseen ally. Picture a young sapling straining toward sunlight. It doesn't curse the shade or wrench itself taller overnight. It focuses each day's growth on thickening its trunk, trusting its turn in the canopy will come. Your delayed promotion, that manuscript collecting rejections, the slow building side hustle, these aren't setbacks. They're your rings of growth, invisible but irrefutable. History's greatest leaps often looked like stagnation to outsiders. Michelangelo spent years as an apprentice grinding pigments before touching marble. Yet those lost years trained his eye for color and texture in ways that later made stone seem to breathe. The Stoics called this criteria perseverance with purpose. When jazz legend Miles Davis hit a creative wall, he didn't force new compositions. He practiced scales silently for hours daily, rebuilding his fundamentals. To the outside world, it looked like retreat. To him, it was the discipline of the oak, strengthening where no one could see. Apply this to career plateaus. A junior developer fixated on promotions might miss the golden latency of their stuck years, the chance to master legacy systems before frameworks change, or to fail on smaller projects where stakes are forgiving. Marcus urged, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That bottleneck in middle management, it's teaching you diplomacy no leadership seminar could. The client who won't greenlight your proposal, they're gifting you time to refine flaws you'd otherwise overlook. Nature's patience is strategic. Bamboo spends 5 years building subterranean root networks before exploding 90 feet skyward in weeks. Glaciers reshape continents one grain at a time. Your own delays work the same alchemy. That fallow year after layoffs might be incubating resilience no MBA program teaches. The key is to distinguish waiting from preparing. Passive patience complains about the rain. Active endurance collects it in barrels for the drought ahead. So when frustration whispers, "This is taking too long," counter with Marcus's oak tree meditation. What if this pace is the exact rhythm needed to make my roots unshakable? Because rivers don't debate their course, they simply persist until even granite yields. And when your moment comes, you won't just arrive, you'll endure. Seneca, the philosopher who advised emperors and endured exile, had a surprising prescription for life's chaos: laughter. Not the hollow kind that masks pain, but the deep, rumbling sort that shakes loose the ego's grip. He wrote, "We should make light of all things and endure them with tolerance. It's more human to laugh at life than to lament it." Imagine that: a Stoic, often painted as stone-faced, urging us to chuckle at the cosmic joke of existence. There's profound strategy here. Humor doesn't undermine resilience. It disinfects the wounds of disappointment with the antiseptic of perspective. Take Seneca's own life. Forced to live in a drafty Corsican hut during exile, he quipped that the island's only cultural advantage was its lack of an audience for bad poetry. This wasn't denial, it was alchemy, transforming hardship into material for wit. Picture a modern executive, suit drenched by a sudden downpour before a big presentation. The Stoic move, not stiff-lipped stoicism, but a grin and a line like, "Well, at least now they'll remember me as the speaker who literally poured his heart out." The circumstance doesn't change, but the weight it carries does. The Stoic laugh has rules, though. It's never cruel or at another's expense. That's just disguised insecurity. True Stoic humor starts with self-deprecation, like Marcus Aurelius poking fun at his own tendency to oversleep. "I'm a man who needs an alarm clock and a conscience." Or Epictetus, the former slave, joking that his limp made him the original step counter. These weren't put-downs, they were power moves. By laughing at themselves first, they robbed life's unpredictability of its sting. Try this today. Recount your most cringe-worthy recent fail, the botched presentation, the awkward date, the gym mishap, but frame it as if you're narrating a sitcom episode. Notice how the edges soften. That's the Stoic secret. Tragedy plus time equals comedy, but why wait? Time's just a delivery system for perspective, and humor fast-tracks the process. When the waiter spills soup on your lap, you've got two choices: fume and ruin the meal, or channel Seneca and declare, "Finally, someone who agrees my pants needed more color." One leaves you stewing, the other turns you into the hero of your own comedy special. The deeper truth: life's absurdity is inevitable, but suffering is optional. A traffic jam isn't just a delay, it's stand-up material about humanity's shared delusion that honking changes physics. A cancelled flight isn't merely frustrating, it's a plot twist in your personal adventure story. The Stoics didn't teach this to trivialize pain, but to reveal its paper-thin walls. After all, if you can laugh at the storm, you've already built an ark. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who faced exile with a shovel rather than self-pity, had a radical rule for arguments: the best response to anger is silence. Not the cold, seething silence of suppressed rage, but the calm stillness of a tree refusing to sway in a storm. Picture this scenario: you're in a team meeting, and a colleague dismisses your proposal with a sarcastic jab. Blood rushes to your face, your fingers tighten around your pen. Every cell screams to fire back. This is where Stoic restraint becomes your superpower. Instead of reacting, you take 3 deliberate breaths, then simply say, "I'll think on that feedback." The room tenses, waiting for a clash that never comes. Your silence isn't weakness, it's a tactical retreat to higher ground. History's greatest peacemakers mastered this art. When Mahatma Gandhi faced British judges mocking his nonviolent protests, he'd sometimes respond with quiet smiles rather than rebuttals, disarming contempt with unshakable poise. The Stoics understood that most arguments aren't battles of logic but contests of emotional stamina. Like a judo master using an opponent's momentum against them, silence lets the other person's aggression exhaust itself while you conserve energy for what truly matters. Try this role-play exercise. Next time someone baits you, imagine Rufus whispering in your ear, Does reacting serve your purpose or theirs? Visualize the encounter not as a debate to win, but as a lab to observe human behavior. When your sibling accuses you of selfishness during a holiday dispute, experiment with nodding and saying, "You might be right." Watch how disoriented they become when denied the expected resistance. Their words hang in the air, stripped of power because you've refused to play the game. The magic lies in distinguishing battles from wars. A Stoic doesn't avoid all conflict. They choose their battlefields with the precision of a general. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." When a rival spreads rumors, responding with dignity doesn't mean you're passive. It means you've redefined victory. Your reputation isn't built on their terms, but on your unbroken integrity. Practical drill, practice Stoic silence sprints. Set a timer for 5 minutes during a charged conversation and speak only when absolutely necessary. Notice how much of your usual dialogue is reflexive defense rather than meaningful contribution. Like a musician learning rests between notes, you'll start hearing the power of strategic pauses. The ancient rhetoricians knew this. Cicero would train orators to pause for 4 full seconds before responding to insults, long enough for reason to override ego. But restraint isn't the same as repression. Later, in private, you might journal your unfiltered thoughts or discuss the incident with a trusted mentor. The key is delaying reaction until you can respond from principle, not impulse. Think of a blacksmith pulling molten metal from the forge, shaping it deliberately rather than flinging it while it's scalding hot. Your words carry weight. Silence lets you calibrate the scales. In the end, Stoic silence is the ultimate power move. It transforms you from a participant in petty skirmishes to an observer of human nature, free to engage only when it serves your highest purpose. Because sometimes the loudest statement is the one you never make. Crates of Thebes did something that would make any financial advisor faint. He dumped his entire fortune into the sea. Not in a dramatic, cinematic moment, but with the casual indifference of someone discarding an empty cup. This wasn't reckless abandon. It was a live demonstration of Stoic poverty, a radical redefinition of what it means to possess and be possessed. The ancient philosopher didn't see himself as losing wealth. He was shedding chains. Fast forward to today, where the average person checks their bank balance over 30 times a month, and you start to grasp the power of his lesson. Poverty and wealth aren't about numbers in an account, but about the space those numbers occupy in your mind. The Stoics drew a sharp line between using material things and needing them. Epictetus, born into slavery, framed it like this: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Picture 2 travelers, one lugging an overstuffed backpack, sweating under its weight, while the other moves freely with just a small satchel. The second isn't poorer. They've simply mastered the art of carrying only what serves them. Modern life bombards us with inverted values. We chase promotions to buy things that demand more time to maintain, creating a loop where possessions end up owning us. The true measure of wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you can walk away from without a second glance. Here's the litmus test. Imagine your home caught fire, and you could save only 3 non-living things. Not family photos or heirlooms, but objects you rely on daily. Your phone, your laptop, your favorite jacket. Notice the clench in your chest as you mentally surrender the rest. That tension is the invisible tax of attachment. The Stoics didn't advocate destitution. They practiced ascesis, voluntary discomfort, to prove that joy isn't tied to externals. Seneca, one of Rome's richest men, regularly slept on a hard pallet and wore coarse tunics beneath his senator's robes, not because he hated comfort, but to remind himself, "This is what I am without my fortune." Modern psychology validates this ancient hack. Studies on lottery winners and accident victims reveal that after an initial spike or dip, happiness levels return to baseline within months. The furniture of our lives changes, but the floor beneath us stays the same. The Stoic twist: instead of waiting for fate to strip things away, we preemptively loosen our grip. Try this today. Open your closet and pick one item you love but rarely use. A designer watch, a signed book, a cherished gadget. Now give it away, not to a donation bin where it's faceless, but to someone who'll appreciate it deeply. That momentary resistance you feel before letting go, that's the muscle Kratos was strengthening when he tossed his gold into the waves. The deeper practice isn't about stuff at all. It's about auditing the invisible currencies we hoard. Like the executive who clings to status symbols because they confuse net worth with self-worth, or the artist who equates exposure with validation. These are psychological Kratos moments waiting to happen. When Diogenes' Kratos teacher saw a child drinking from his hands, he smashed his wooden bowl, realizing even that was excess. Your version might be deleting an app that fuels comparison, or turning down a lucrative project that misaligns with your values. Wealth, in the Stoic sense, is the space between what you have and what you desire. Close that gap and you're rich no matter what the market does. So here's your challenge this week: gift something that feels like a sacrifice. Not junk you've been meaning to discard, but an object that carries real emotional weight. Watch how the world doesn't collapse when it's gone. Notice the lightness that follows. That's the sound of a chain breaking, the same clink Kratos heard as his coins hit the water, buying him a freedom no amount of gold could replicate. The daily invincibility drill isn't about adding more to your morning. It's about strategically layering 3 ancient practices into a single powerhouse ritual. Think of it as mental cross-training. Meditation sharpens your focus, journaling clarifies your purpose, and intention setting locks in your direction. Together, they form a trifecta that primes your mind to meet chaos with unshakable calm. Marcus Aurelius did this at dawn with his scrolls and reflections, and you can adapt it today before your first sip of coffee. Start with 5 minutes of Stoic meditation, not the clear your mind variety, but active engagement with your thoughts. Sit upright, close your eyes, and visualize the day ahead. Picture potential friction points: the rushed commute, the tense meeting, the overflowing inbox. Now rehearse your responses. When your boss criticizes your proposal, breathe deeply instead of bristling. When traffic snarls, use the pause to listen to an audiobook. This isn't wishful thinking, it's neural preparation. Studies show mental visualization activates the same brain regions as physical practice, essentially pre-loading calm reactions before you need them. Next, grab a notebook for 3 minutes of targeted journaling. Skip generic gratitude lists. Stoics go deeper. Answer 2 questions: what's within my control today? And what's not? For the first, jot concrete actions like your preparation, attitude, and effort. For the second, list external variables like others' opinions or delays. Draw a line between them. This simple act trains your brain to invest energy where it counts, just as Epictetus taught. The chief task in life is to distinguish what's ours from what isn't. The final 2 minutes are for intention setting, not vague affirmations, but battle-tested Stoic vows. Choose one virtue to emphasize today: courage in that difficult conversation, temperance with after-work drinks, justice in how you delegate tasks. Write it as an if-then statement. If my colleague takes credit for my idea, I'll respond with facts, not emotion. Psychologists call this implementation intention, a proven way to hardwire habits. The Stoics called it prohesis, the art of pre-deciding your values so you don't improvise them under pressure. Time crunched, condense it. 1 minute visualizing one challenge, 1 minute journaling your control boundary, 30 seconds naming your virtue focus. Even this stripped-down version creates a psychological armor that lasts all day. The key is consistency, not perfection. Some mornings you'll rush through it, other days it'll feel profound. What matters is showing up daily, like a blacksmith steadily hammering raw iron into tempered steel. Customize it to your battles. A parent might visualize patience during bedtime resistance. A student could journal about controlling study focus versus fretting over exam difficulty. The framework stays universal, the application personal. That's the beauty of Stoic drills. They're not rigid scripts but flexible tools, honed through centuries of real-world testing. Your version might evolve into scribbling mantras on shower steam or reciting intentions during your commute. The form doesn't matter, the function does. Close the ritual by touching something symbolic, a coin in your pocket, a ring on your finger, as a physical reminder of your morning resolve. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of an empire, yet he started each day with this quiet reckoning. Your challenges may differ, but your access to the same unshakable core doesn't. 10 minutes now saves hours of reactive flailing later. Because invincibility isn't about avoiding storms, it's about learning to sail through them with your compass always set true. Acceptance, perspective, discipline, these are the three pillars that hold up a mind that doesn't flinch. Think of them like the legs of a tripod. Remove one, and the whole structure wobbles. Acceptance isn't about resignation. It's the clear-eyed recognition of what's outside your control, so you can pour your energy into what is. Perspective is the lens that transforms obstacles into opportunities, the mental alchemy that turns setbacks into setups for growth. And discipline, that's the daily grind, the unglamorous repetitions, cold showers taken, journals filled, breaths counted, that wire your nervous system for resilience. Together, they form an unbreakable framework, tested by emperors and slaves alike, proving that steadiness isn't inherited, it's built. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned a life of slavery into a masterclass in freedom, left us with a razor-sharp directive. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. That's the Stoic method in a single line. Define the person you aim to become: calm in chaos, kind in conflict, relentless in purpose, and then act as if you already are that person. Every choice, from how you handle a rude comment to how you face a crushing loss, becomes a vote for that version of yourself. The gap between what you are and what you would be closes not through grand gestures, but through 1,000 tiny, uncelebrated decisions. Here's where you start today. Pick one of these pillars and give it teeth. If it's acceptance, practice catching yourself when you complain about traffic or weather and silently reframe it. This is the reality. How will I use it? If it's perspective, take a current frustration and ask, what if this is exactly what I need to grow stronger where I'm weak? And if it's discipline, commit to one daily act of voluntary discomfort, a 5-minute cold shower, a postponed meal, or biting back that snippy reply. The scale doesn't matter, the consistency does. This isn't about perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote reminders to himself like "Stop drifting" and "Get back to work." The goal is progress, not purity. A mind that bends without breaking, that meets life's slings and arrows with the quiet confidence of a tree rooted deep. So take Epictetus' challenge, declare who you'll be, then act accordingly. The world will test that resolve, but every test is just another chance to prove it. For more Stoic wisdom to fuel your journey, hit subscribe. The next video dives into how Stoicism's ancient principles can navigate modern minefields, from social media outrage to workplace politics. Until then, remember, the unflinching mind isn't born, it's built, and you've already laid the first.